A U.S. brokered 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon has gone into effect to bring a temporary moment of respite after weeks of heavy strikes.
What does Viktor Orban's defeat in Hungary and Washington's decision to phase out waivers for Russian oil mean for the European Union?
Europe has maybe 6 weeks or so of jet fuel left, warned the head of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol.
U.S. President Donald Trump announced a 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon on Thursday, which has now come into effect to bring a temporary moment of respite after weeks of ongoing Israeli strikes. And though the Iran-backed Hezbollah, whom Israeli forces are fighting, are not party to the deal, Trump says they will abide by its terms.
I think they will. I think it's going to be, actually it's very exciting because it's 48 years. We're going to be meeting with Bibi Netanyahu, as you know, and the president of Lebanon. And I had a great talk with both of them today. They're going to be having a ceasefire, and that'll include Hezbollah.
News of the truce was well received in Lebanon, with people firing tracer rounds in celebration, and also by the international community.
We welcome steps that would end hostilities and suffering on both sides of the blue line. The United Nations, through our political and peacekeeping missions, remains ready to support these efforts and continues to urge the full implementation of Security Council Resolution 1701. And that full implementation is towards a permanent ceasefire and a long-term solution to the conflict.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu welcomed the opportunity for peace with Lebanon, but stressed that Israeli troops will not withdraw from their occupied so-called security zone.
זה רצועת ביטחון שמתחילה בים וממשיכה עד הר דוב ומבואות החרמון עד גבול סוריה. רצועת ביטחון של 10 קילומטר עובי שהיא הרבה יותר חזקה, הרבה יותר עצימה, הרבה יותר רצופה והרבה יותר מוצקה ממה שהיה לנו קודם לכן. שם אנחנו נמצאים, אנחנו לא יוצאים.
Israel says it also reserves the right to attack at any time to respond to any threat it perceives, even preemptively. The Lebanese Health Ministry says Israeli strikes since the beginning of the war in Iran have killed at least 1,200 people, injured thousands, and displaced roughly 1.2 million.
The United States will prevent all shipping from entering or exiting Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz for as long as it takes.
10 a.m. Eastern Standard.
U.S. War Secretary Pete Hegseth said the Navy is using less than 10% of its power to enforce the blockade, as he complained about allies not aiding the effort.
Iran might get a nuclear bomb. Allies have talked a lot and haven't done anything. And as the president has pointed out, this is a waterway that the American commerce doesn't use all that much. We don't rely on the energy coming out of the Strait of Hormuz, but Asia does and Europe does.
President Donald Trump also posted on social media and warned that any Iranian ships attempting to break it will be eliminated.
If they had a nuclear weapon.
The blockade began on Monday after U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance left peace negotiations in Islamabad without a deal. The blockade will apply to all vessel traffic, regardless of nationality. Traffic through the strategic waterway has been almost completely blocked since the war started on February 28th. This has sent energy prices spiking around the world. The International Energy Agency warns that Europe only has about 6 weeks of jet fuel left if supplies remain blocked.
On the second leg of his African tour, Pope Leo on Thursday traveled to the western Cameroonian city of Bamenda, preaching a message of peace to a region that's been at the epicenter of a separatist conflict that humanitarian groups have called one of the world's most neglected crises.
Jesus told us, "Blessed are the peacemakers, but woe to those who manipulate religion in the very name of God for their own military, economic, or political gain."
Pope Leo's message follows his speech given on Wednesday upon his arrival in the Central African country, where he urged the Paul Biya government to root out corruption. President Biya, who at 93 is the world's oldest leader, sat passively as Pope Leo read his speech in French at the presidential palace in Yaoundé.
Pour que la paix et la justice s'affirment, il faut en effet briser les chaînes de la corruption qui défigurent l'autorité en la vidant de sa crédibilité. Il faut libérer les cœurs de cette soif de gain qui est une idolâtrie. Le véritable gain, c'est le développement humain intégral, c'est-à-dire la croissance équilibrée de tous les aspects qui font de la vie sur cette terre une bénédiction.
Being the first pope to visit Cameroon since 2009, many cheering Cameroonians gave Pope Leo a raucous welcome, lining the road into the capital, Yaoundé, from the airport, dancing and waving palm fronds as the Pope's motorcade whizzed by. Ahead of the visit, the Vatican had said fighting corruption in Cameroon would be one of the themes of Leo's visit, and the Pope did not hold back.
The defeat of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán at the polls and Washington's decision to phase out waivers for Russian oil is raising hopes in Brussels that EU sanctions against Russia will finally be unblocked. Hungary and Slovakia have vetoed EU sanctions against Moscow and the 90 billion euros loan for Ukraine over an unrelated dispute with Kyiv involving the Druzhba pipeline. Meanwhile, in Washington, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced that the administration would not provide further sanctions relief to Russia. The 30-day permit, which expired over the weekend, allowed other countries to purchase Russian oil that was already at sea. The American decision to provide sanctions relief to Russia had outraged Europeans.
We believe that, in general, giving any relief in terms of sanctions at this point in time vis-à-vis Russia is not helpful in maintaining the pressure on Russia.
Pino expressed hope that the sanctions would soon be approved.
Europe could face a shortage of jet fuel in the coming weeks, said the head of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, on Thursday, warning of a possible flight cancellations soon if oil supplies remain blocked by the Iran war.
But the IEA has released oil. We are in Europe. We have maybe 6 weeks or so jet fuel left. If we are not able to open the Strait of Hormuz, if the refineries, as a result, will start to work, I can tell you soon we will hear the news that some of the flights from city A to city B might be cancelled as a result of lack of jet fuel.
Last week, the Airports Council International Europe wrote to the European Commission saying shortages of jet fuel could begin at the beginning of May if tankers do not begin sailing through the Hormuz. The situation varies considerably across the continent. Austria, Bulgaria and Poland have comfortable stocks. For Britain, Iceland and the Netherlands, it is the opposite. France is somewhere in the middle, and the impact won't be the same for all airports and airlines. Airlines for Europe, a trade association that includes Air France-KLM, Lufthansa and Ryanair, has been urging the European Union to begin providing real-time information on jet fuel stocks at airports. They have been waiting for hours. These immigrants in Spain have been queuing to gather all the necessary documents to qualify for the fast-track immigration procedure. Despite the wait and technical issues, these immigrants remain optimistic.
Puede ser muy bueno para todos, beneficioso para el trabajo supuestamente, ¿no? Para que nos den un trabajo con todos los beneficios, ya que estamos así trabajando, ¿no? De negro, ¿no? Abre puertas para un mejor futuro, una mejor estabilidad, o sea, tantas cosas.
Spain's government finalized a migrant amnesty measure that it announced earlier this year, paving the way for immigrants living and working without authorization to apply for legal status. An estimated 500,000 people living in Spain without authorization could be eligible to apply, the government said. Those who meet certain conditions can now apply for 1-year residency and work permit.
Polish Finance Minister Andrzej Domanski has recently advised Poles to keep cash at home in case of digital failures. We asked Warsaw residents how they feel about this and whether they keep a cash reserve for emergencies.
Uważam, że bardzo dobry pomysł. No nie można być całkowicie zależnym tylko i wyłącznie od bankomatu.
No to warto trochę mieć. Zawsze mam z sobą trochę tam do 1000 złotych mam, żeby w razie czego, bo jak podróżuję na przykład i nie ma innej opcji, często tylko gotówką.
Uważam, że tak, że musimy mieć i kartę, i pieniążki. Dlatego, że proszę sobie wyobrazić, jesteśmy w jakiejś miejscowości, ktoś nam kradnie kartę albo gubimy. No jesteśmy pod presją, prawda, że nie mamy czym zapłacić, nawet powrotu kupienia biletu.
Ja mam takie myślenie, co no gotówka to pierwsze, a po drugie to jest karta i coś tam na rachunkach. Bo tak dla zwykłej osoby, no wszystko może być. Wojna, kryzysy w świecie, tak, no i bez gotówki, no to tragedia.
Meanwhile, the European Union is rolling out the idea of a digital euro, which could help reduce dependence on American payment processes.
Nie jesteśmy w strefie euro, ale euro to jest taka pewna gotówka. No nie wiem, jak banki z tym dadzą radę, to znaczy jak to rozwiążą.
Myślę, że ta cyfryzacja na tyle postępuje, że dobrze jakbyśmy się jakoś uniezależnili od tych dużych koncernów.
After the pandemic and amid ongoing wars, cyber attacks and blackouts, more and more people prefer to hold cash in their hands rather than keep it in the digital cloud.